Well, it's the knockout game again, but when a white man is the perpetrator, it's a hate crime. Here to help elaborate on the hypocrisy in this story is Christopher Arps. He's co-founder of MoveOnUp.org and is a member of the group Project 21. Mr. Arps, thanks for joining the show. So, in this case, we have a 27-year-old man knocking out an 87-year-old man on the street with a sucker punch. It follows the MO of the famous knockout game perpetrated on the streets of London and America here. In this case, is different. Instead of the usual perpetrators, this man was charged with a hate crime. Why is that, in your opinion?
Well, I think it shows just how subjective the whole hate crime law legislation is. You know, right now it's not being applied fairly. It's also what's happened with the Obama administration. We remember in 2008 when Black Panthers were in front of the voting blocks, not allowing people to vote and intimidating them. It's just something that we see recurrent within the Obama administration, that they handle racial-related matters differently than they should.
Really, yeah, you know, I did a little research into this case, and I kind of understand why the feds are going to, in my mind, they're trying to make an example out of this case. Usually the feds really like to stay out of these kind of social issues unless they want to make an example out of someone, and this is why I believe this is the case here. This guy's a 27-year-old white guy. He punches an 87-year-old African-American fellow. That man was hospitalized for 4 days, broke 3 of his teeth, and broke his jaw in 2 places. The reason I think that the reason I believe that they are charging him as a hate crime instead of the normal assault or even attempted murder for that instance is because this man filmed himself using many racial expletives and you know, saying that I'm going to go get this guy, call him racial expletives. It sets up the you know, the start of it. Doesn't that, in your mind, have a heavy part in this case? I mean, he puts himself on camera and he's like, I'm going to go get this guy. And he's obviously having many major racial epithets that he's saying over and over and over, and then he goes and does it, hospitalizes the guy.
Well, I think if you look at some of the other knockout game cases that have gone around the country, there have been racial epithets that have been hurled at white people.
Yeah.
I mean, you just look at the preponderance of the evidence. Most of these crimes are young black youth that are attacking white people or Jews or other ethnic or other minorities. You know, the knockout game has a significant history here in St. Louis. It started, a lot of people say that it started here. We had 4 instances of the knockout game back in 2005 when no one had ever heard of that yet. One of those instances resulted in the death of an 87-year-old Vietnamese immigrant who was walking home with his wife from the local grocery store, and a bunch of youth attacked him and ended up killing him. And another second notorious case we had where the mayor of St. Louis was riding home with his bodyguard from work, and he happened upon a knockout situation that was going on, and his bodyguard stopped them. Unfortunately, the people were never prosecuted for the crime because of the no snitch rule that kind of goes along in the urban communities where nobody wanted to testify. Yeah,
because, you know, I've seen it in many of the cases. It seems that color is not an issue. As you already stated, there's a Vietnamese man that's hit. Usually, sometimes it's black on black, it's white on white, it's white on black, black on white. Color really doesn't matter. It's a group of teenagers, nothing better to do, and you know, in the different groups or areas that they live in. And they go and hit them. I had a theory earlier this year that the game Grand Theft Auto 5 might have instigated this. Unlike the other previous 4 Grand Theft Autos before it, Grand Theft Auto 5 is unique in the instance where you can actually walk up to someone, any unsuspecting pedestrian, and knock them out in one punch. Do you think it might have been that, and with this game sold, I mean, over 5 makes $15, $20 million in the first day, more every single day after that. With, you know, groups across the country playing this game, do you think video games had an influence into this culture? Or?
I think it definitely had an influence. I mean, you have to really be in complete denial to not think that some of these video games are not creating some of the crime that's happening among our youth. I mean, if you look at the high school shootings, Devin Klebold and the other guy in Colorado, that when they went to their homes, they saw that they played very violent video games that simulated kind of the same type of attack, maybe not school attacks, but the same similar attacks like that. They dressed like some of the characters that were in these video games. They watched movies that were similar to that. So I've always thought that it's pure denial not to think that popular culture doesn't affect some of these crimes.
It's interesting. I mean, as I'm obviously a younger individual, I've played video games throughout my whole life. The thing I've really learned, if it has any benefit at all, it teaches you to make decisions under stress quickly. And it's funny because it's like I'll see 12-year-old, 14-year-old kids pick up an assault rifle, or I'm sorry, actually that's a terrible term because semi-automatic rifles are the real term, and they completely know how to use an AR-15, an AK, a FAL, any weapon from any of the countries. It's cool. I mean, you learn a lot. They put a lot of information in these things. In video games, the scripts for Call of Duty, for instance, are sold for $1.5 million. They're becoming interactive films. I've done psychological surveys and studies into video games where they found that you have higher levels of stress and irritability about 5 minutes after, but then it subsides quickly after. Do you agree with that, or do you think that, I mean, it really does incite violence? Is that your opinion?
I think it does incite violence. If you see, I watch a lot of shows like the First 48. Yeah. Where they document these crimes that happen, these murders in inner cities. And the one thing that always perplexes me is these kids make these snap decisions without thinking. Do you realize if you pull that trigger, you commit this crime, that you're ending someone's life?
Yeah, there's no reset button.
Or you may be throwing away your own life. You may be doing many years in prison. And I think just playing these video games, desensitizes them to that fact.
I totally agree. I truly believe that this man just did it for national attention. They gave it to him immediately. With a topic like this, anytime we can turn it around is exactly what we're going to do.
Exactly.
Christopher, unfortunately, we're out of time on this segment here, but thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's an interesting topic, and it's interesting to see how our country treats, stories like this and gives it immediate national attention when it's wanted. For those of you at home, you can follow Christopher's work at moveonup.org. And for everyone, now it's your favorite time of the day. Well,